Everybody, this is Dreamin'. After a day off of NBA, we're back with a 14-game slate today. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, make sure to check out the links in the description below and check out YouTube memberships. You'll get my daily write-ups for NBA, and you're also going to get college basketball today and NHL write-ups, at least my top picks for those sports, so go ahead and check those things out. Make sure to join Discord as well. There's a lot of cool people in there, and it's a fun time. So with that said, let's get into the slate here. So this is going to be a huge 14-game slate. I'm going to go through an injury report real quick. For the Kings, Fox is out. For the Blazers, Simmons, Williams, and Scoot Henderson are all out. For the Warriors, Draymond Green is questionable. For the Jazz, Kessler is questionable. For the Hornets, Rozier's out. For the Clippers, Plumlee is out. For the Nets, Cam Johnson is doubtful, and Claxton is out. For the Spurs, Vassell is doubtful. For the Suns, Beal is questionable, and Booker is out. For the Lakers, Davis is questionable. Vincent and Vanderbilt are out. For the Rockets, Thompson is out. For the Pistons, Burks and Ivy are out, and Duren is questionable. For the Bucks, Middleton is sitting out today. For the Pelicans, McCollum is out, and Jones is questionable. For the Cavs, Okoro is out. For the Thunder, Dort is questionable. For the Grizzlies, Tillman, Rose, Clark, Morant, and Adams are out. And for the Nuggets, Murray is out. So actually not a ton of questionable options today, but there's still a few. Obviously, a couple that could play into the slate, but overall, it's actually a fairly decent slate from the perspective of that. So let's go and get into our plays here. So we're going to start with our point guards, and we're going to start with Halliburton for Indiana. He's played fairly well so far this season. He's had a few boom games recently. His floor is in the mid 40s. As long as he's sub 10K, he's somebody I like to look for, as he's got great upside, especially with his assist numbers and his rebounding potential. He definitely has played well recently. Then we're going to look at Fred VanVleet for Houston. He's facing the Lakers, which is a nice upside game for him. His price has come up a little. His floor has been lower than we would like, but his ceiling is as good as anyone, and he's got a plus matchup here against the Lakers. Then we'll look at Cam Thomas for Brooklyn. Now, he's been getting a lot of upside as he's been shooting a ton of shots and getting lots of big total point games where he had 45 actual points last game. He's had several 30-plus point games this season. He's taken over as a better option than Dinwiddie, and as long as Dinwiddie is not playing well, he's going to get all the shots he can handle and all the minutes he can handle, which he's getting close to 35-plus every game. So he does draw a lot of potential here, and his price is still really good. I expect him to rise over 8,000 if he continues this, if not higher. Then we'll look at Kobe White for the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls have been all over the place so far this season, but he's playing really well right now in the last few games. He's also got some good potential here, and he's especially against injury-plagued Suns. So I do think he's got some nice upside in this one. Then we'll look at Killian Hayes, who is a core play for me today for Detroit. He's going to draw a lot of opportunity in the next couple games with the injuries to Burks and to Jaden Ivey. He tends to be a pretty good option whenever some people miss, and he's playing really well the last few games. So he does draw a really good upside. His price is still too cheap as well, as it hasn't really come up since the injuries. So I do like his potential here. You could also consider Marcus Sasser and Jalen Brunson at this position. Moving to shooting guards, we'll look at Donovan Mitchell. Now he's a contrarian option off of Tyrese Halliburton, but he's been a decent option to go away from Halliburton. He's played really well lately and has a big ceiling. As long as he's under 10K, he's been worth a look. Obviously, it looks like they have most of their guys back now, so maybe his usage will go down a little bit, but he still has lots of assist upside, and he does get decent rebounding numbers for a point guard, so he definitely has some potential here. Then we'll look at Edwards for Minnesota. He's also an inconsistent player, but he has a lower floor. His price has dropped a bit, though, and that gets him a lot of potential, as he does have 50-plus fantasy point upside. He's had a few big monster games recently. Obviously, he has that utility, but he does have a little bit of a worse floor than some of the other guys available in his price range, but he's got a great matchup today. Then we'll look at Jalen Green for Houston. He's been decent, solid option so far this season. He's had a couple lackluster games, but he has a lot of potential, and his ceiling is lower than some other options in his price range. But he's also been pretty consistent, so I do like his upside in this one. Especially with guys on that team playing inconsistent. He's been one of the better, safer ones. Then we'll look at Talon Horton Tucker. Now, he's always kind of a favorite for daily fantasy, but he does have a low floor, so do keep that in mind. as he is wildly inconsistent, but that usually has to do with a lot of usage and consistencies on the Jazz themselves, as they have a lot of forwards that get a lot of upside. But he does have some potential at this price point. As long as his price stays under 5,500 or so, then he's definitely going to be somebody to consider because he can score over 30 fantasy points most games if he puts the work in. He just needs to score in double figures because he usually gets the assists and rebounds that he needs. Though he's had a couple games that have hurt him getting a lot of turnovers, but he does have a lot of upside in this matchup, so he has some potential here. And then we'll look at Jordan Hawkins, who is a core play right now. You do want to make sure he draws the start. As with McCollum out, he does look like he'll be drawing the start, and he had an absolutely monster game in his first game against Denver, where he scored 31 points. I don't expect a repeat of that, but I still think he can score in the mid 20 fantasy points range, and he's still cheap enough that he's viable. Though he does have a little bit of risk here because he does have a low floor, but he definitely has a high ceiling with McCollum out. Looking also considers Tyler Hero and Malcolm Brogdon can also play this position. Cam Thomas also as well. So moving into our small forwards here, we're going to start with DeMar DeRozan. For the Bulls, now he's been inconsistent. He's been pretty consistent so far this season, though his floor has been around 30 fantasy points, and he hadn't had a lot of ceiling games. He's only had 2 so far, but he definitely has that upside in this matchup here. If this game stays pretty close, which I kind of expect it to do, because it's going to be Durant versus DeRozan for the most part, at least in the first half. I think in the fourth quarter they're both going to turn it on, and he's going to have a lot of upside as a result. That's kind of how he plays right now. Is he really turns it on in the fourth quarter, try to help them get the win. And as you can see through the season, that's pretty much what he's done. If it's a blowout, that could be a problem, but I still think the Bulls stick in this game as they have enough upside in this one to be a pretty tight game and should have some high scoring aspects here. Then we're going to look at Gordon Hayward for Charlotte. Now, he's been very consistent so far this season, something that I'm not completely used to with him, but his price is still really good. It has come up a little bit. Excuse me. But he's scoring close to 40 fantasy points most games. His floor is right around 30 fantasy points so far this season, so he has that potential. He's also got a great match against the Wizards, who are just terrible defensively. I look for him to have a great game here. Then we're going to look at R.J. Barrett for the Knicks. Now, he's been inconsistent most of the time, which he has a low floor, but he's a contrarian play off of Hayward, more of a GPP play if you want to use him as opposed to Hayward, as he has a higher ceiling. But he hasn't really met it a lot so far this season, but he does have that potential. He does need to score more points than Hayward does, as he doesn't get as many assists and rebounds as some other guys do at this price point, but he's kind of a scoring required guard. Then we'll look at Jay Crowder for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, he's been inconsistent so far this season, but the reason he's inconsistent is because he comes off the bench, and his minutes are a little bit all over the place. But he's going to have a lot of upside today with Middleton being out, as Middleton plays around 25-30 minutes so far, but easily does play a lot of his minutes too. But I look for Crowder to step in and play around 28 to 30 minutes, and as long as he can get a few points and some assists and rebounds, then he should be able to pay off at this minimum price point, as he's played really solid so far this season. Also consider LeBron James and Mikal Bridges at the position. Also meant to mention for Crowder is that he does tend to get some defensive stats like blocks and steals, which also give him some utility here. Moving in our power forwards, we'll look at Chet Holmgren. Now, he's rounding out to be a very good player so far this season as a rookie. His price is still pretty fair here. He does have a lower floor, as he had that early in the season, but the last few games he's really turned it up. This is a tougher matchup against Cleveland, as they do tend to play a slow-down game, but I look for him to try to push the ball and get a lot of upside here. He also has a really good block potential, and Cleveland's definitely a team that he could probably get a few more blocks against, and so I do look for him to have a good game from that perspective here. But he does have some risk here on this slate, as he's a little bit pricey for a guy that hasn't played very many games yet, and this is a tough matchup. But he's still in play. Kyle Kuzma also in play for the Wizards. Now again, he has a good plus matchup here against Charlotte. He's been surprisingly consistent so far this season. Now, when I say that, his floor is in the mid-30s, and he's been in that half the season, and then he's had over 40 fantasy points in several of the games. But his price is still pretty good. If he gets over $8,000, it'll be harder to roster him. But right now at this price range, he's still a viable option here. You could also look at DeMar DeRozan, Gordon Hayward, and R.J. Barrett, who I already mentioned, and Jay Crowder. They can all play this position as well. Then we're going to look at PJ Washington for Charlotte. Now, Charlotte definitely looks interesting today, and he has been oddly consistent so far this season. He's not had any floor games yet. So right now he's in the 28 to 35 range for most games, and that gives him a very good cash game vibe for this particular matchup, especially against Washington, who's pretty terrible. He's also been really good at home so far this season, scoring really good and getting a lot of rebounds. And this is definitely a matchup that's going to give him some utility here. That said, he does have that low floor that he traditionally has, so do keep that in mind. But he's definitely got the upside on the slate. Looking at also considers for this position, LeBron James and Mikal Bridges can also fit in here as well. LeBron also obviously would get a boost if Anthony Davis gets ruled out. Looking at the center position, we're going to look at Joel Embiid for Philly. Now, he has a tougher matchup here with Boston, but now that Harden's gone, he's got a lot of upside each game, and he's had some really monster games lately. He does have a lower floor than we'd like, considering the fact that he has this monster situation. He does need to score 25 plus points and get a double double really to pay off, and he does need to get some assists, but he's been doing really good at that as well. If he gets get some extra blocks and stuff, that would definitely boost his fantasy output as well. But this is going to be a tougher matchup, but he still really has good upside, and he's probably my favorite guy that's over 10,000 on the slate. Then we'll look at Miles Turner for Indianapolis, or sorry, for Indiana. I don't know why I keep saying that. Too much NFL. But his floor here is low, his ceiling is high, but he's still priced pretty fairly. That gives him a good upside here, as he's had a lot of good upside games. You just have to keep in mind that he sometimes scores under 25 fantasy points, which is his low floor, and I do not like that sometimes, but he definitely is playing well right now, and so as long as he's playing well and he's getting the 30 minutes, which he doesn't get all the time, he definitely has potential. Sometimes he only gets in the mid-20s, so do keep that in mind, but he's still in play on the slate. PJ Washington is also available at this position. Mark Williams for Charlotte. He's kind of a risky play today, as he is in a timeshare with Nick Richards at the center position for the Hornets, but he's got a good matchup here against the Wizards, who don't have much that can slow anybody down. And he's been shooting the ball very well, getting a lot of good baskets. That said, he is high risk, high reward, because he does need to get close to a double-double to pay off at least. And he's been getting a lot of steals and blocks the last few games as well, which does boost his stats up. But he's still in play. He's just a high-risk option on the slate. Mitchell Robinson looks very interesting today for the Knicks. He's still priced pretty fairly. His minutes are also kind of inconsistent, but as long as he plays well and he gets a lot of rebounds, he'll have some upside here. He does need to score, 6 to 8 points to really pay off if he can get the double-digit rebounds. But because he doesn't really get any assists, but he definitely has some potential in this matchup as long as his price stays under, where it's at right now. He's going to be somebody to consider, but he's still high risk, high reward, as he does have a high ceiling. Then we'll look at Naz Reid for Minnesota. Now he's been coming off the bench, but he's been playing really well off the bench, playing around 20 to 25 minutes. So he is a value play here. His ceiling isn't all that great, but his floor has been really good so far, and he has some utility here. The scoring in double figures every game so far this season, so that gives him some upside. You could also consider Alperen Sengun, Bam Adebayo, and Chet Holmgren at this position as well. And then we're going to get into our FanDuel picks here, and I'm just going to show you those here. So for the point guards, Halliburton and Jalen Brunson and Van Vliet are the top expensive options. Now, Halliburton definitely looks good here, but Brunson and Van Vliet both priced pretty fairly and have some upside here. And Brogdon is kind of a contrarian play because obviously he's going to get the minutes, but his price has skyrocketed so much, he's no longer a must-play. But Marcus Smart is priced pretty fairly and has some utility. Killian Hayes has some upside at this price point with all the injuries to the Pacers, to the Pistons point guards, and then Kobe White and Reggie Jackson have some utility. Reggie Jackson, a lot more utility on FanDuel with Murray out because his price is lower, but on DraftKings has come up a lot. Looking at our shooting guards, Anthony Edwards and Cam Thomas are the more expensive options. I really like Cam Thomas today. I think Edwards is a good price point, but he definitely carries the risk. Bridges has played pretty well, but he's also carried some risk here. Azure Thompson has been great for the Pistons, and I look for him to be solid again, though the price has come up some, so that is a concern. Gordon Hayward has been really consistent, as has Jalen Green, so I do like both those guys. And then Jordan Hawkins has played really well, and he's pretty cheap here on FanDuel, so I really like his upside in this matchup if he draws a start. Looking at our smart forwards, Anthony Edwards, again, can play here. DeMar DeRozan and Cam Thomas, both the same price on FanDuel. And honestly, I probably like DeRozan a little bit safer, but Cam Thomas has more upside. Mikal Bridges also in that price range is a little bit of a contrarian option. Gordon Hayward's a little bit cheaper, which gives him some utility. And then RJ Barrett is kind of a high risk, high reward option that's a little bit cheaper. Looking at our power forwards, Mobley, Randall, and Kuzma are all in a very similar price range. I like Kuzma the best, with Randall being second and Mobley being third, but Mobley is definitely a contrarian option with everybody back there. He's going to have a little bit harder time today. PJ Washington in play here as well with a very good floor right now. Bobby Porter gets some utility with Milton out, and his price a little bit too cheap over here. And then Obi Toppin is kind of a good cheap play, though he's high risk, high reward, as his price is not bad, but he definitely has, he's not the third or fourth option on this team, so he does have some concern here. Looking at our centers, Joel Embiid in play, obviously super expensive, but is rosterable if you can fit him. Bam Adebayo actually looks really solid on FanDuel with his price being pretty fair. Mobley's a little bit higher, a little bit cheaper than Bam, but is a little bit more risky than Bam is today. Mark Williams carries some value today, but he's a little bit high risk. I like PJ Washington better than him on this slate, as he's been a lot more consistent. And then Mitchell Robinson has some utility at a similar price point as well, especially when we get the rebounds. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.